tuned in to Rebooting Liberty.
Attention, patriots, freethinkers, truth seekers. You are listening to Agents of Information, broadcasting worldwide on the Rebooting Liberty Radio Network.
It is the most corrupt, degenerate, criminal government in American history.
And I'm sorry to say that the most brazen untruths always come from the left, just like most of the major plagiarism scandals come from the left, because they believe in narrative over fact.
The Second Amendment of our Bill of Rights is my concealed weapons permit. Period.
Anyone that's willing to stand next to me to fight the progressive left, I will be in that bunker.
The answer to 1984 is 1776.
If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.
Greetings, patriots, free thinkers, truth seekers, and all lovers of liberty. You're tuned in to the Agents of Information on the Rebooting Liberty Radio Network. Thank you for joining us here. A reminder, you can find us at live.rebootingliberty.com, and we're streaming at TuneIn Radio. You can find our replays through the website. We're on Spreaker, iTunes, Player FM, Stitcher, and other platforms. The Rebooting Liberty Radio Network streams 24/7 on TuneIn Radio. My name is Jared Day, and co-host Dan Lyman is here. Dan, how are you doing today, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing good, Jared. Doing very well. Glad to do another episode with you here. As I would imagine the rest of the next year or two will go, the news cycle is stacked with insanity. There are so many things going on in, every corner of the world, every corner of politics, every corner of current events, and whether it's geopolitics or national. So some of the things we have going on today that we can address are the Obama town hall on guns, the staged event on CNN that was just, I've seen clips of it. I can never bring myself to watch that whole thing, but pretty painful to watch and to hear all the lies and the demonization of the founding of the United States and him calling the Constitution a piece of paper. It's very weird. Also, we can get into they're making, a little bit of headway towards impeachment of Obama. There have been articles drafted by the North American Law Center and Stephen Pidgeon over there, and Congress is beginning to consider their options with that. So that's a good sign. And then we've got that kind of segues into, we have the governor of Texas really taking a stand against Obama and the federal government in general, and calling for a Convention of States. Convention of States. So many C words rolling around the con. And so they're calling for that and to see what we can do to slow down the federal government or reject them completely, which would be pretty exciting. We got a little bit of Trump news, some polling info. On Thursday, we'll have the GOP debate. Tomorrow night, we'll have the State of the Union, which will give us plenty of fodder, and that will roll into the situation at hand with Islam, Muslims, refugees, rapes, murders, you name it, shootings, attacks. So there's plenty to talk about today.
Yeah, I'd say so. And that the town hall, even liberal media outlets fact-checked Obama and found lies first. And half the half of the country that voted for him, they believed what he said when he said you can just buy a gun off the internet and they ship it to you and then you have a gun. He failed to mention that the gun has to go to a federal licensed dealer, and then when you pick up your gun, you get a background check, just like if you bought it in the store. But he wants people to think guns are out of control and he can just order a gun. And then I don't know how many times and how many Democrats will talk about automatic weapons. They don't know the difference between semi-auto and automatic weapons. And again, the half the country that voted for Obama and that elect Nancy Pelosi or Harry Reid, they think people are running around with machine guns. And it's just, they think that just because an AR-15 looks like something that our troops patrol the streets in Afghanistan or Iraq, they think that it's a military weapon. When
there were so many weird moments in the town hall. Specifically when he starts talking, they do this little back and forth between Anderson Cooper and Obama, and it almost reminded me of like a, who's on first, who's on second and third, that whole bit with Abbott and Costello, because it's, they were playing off each other, and it seemed like they were having way too good of a time with it.
Yeah.
And it was this whole back and forth basically about Obama and coming for the guns and martial law and whether or not that was a conspiracy. And the way that he worded it, it was very slick. He said that it was a conspiracy, that they were coming to take the guns and martial law. He didn't say conspiracy theory, which would have been the proper phrasing there. He chose to say conspiracy, and I don't think that was a mistake. Mm-hmm. I think that these people love rubbing our faces in it when they can, especially him. He's grown so arrogant, and he's just on the cusp of completely destroying the Constitution. Especially the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is really the holy grail for these people, because once they get the Second Amendment under their feet, they can do away with the rest of the Constitution. So his choice of wording was very interesting. I think it was intentional. I think you have a clip of that moment.
Yeah, check out this doublespeak.
On duty. This notion of a conspiracy out there.
But let me just jump in. Is it fair to call it a conspiracy? I mean,
well, yeah.
There's a lot of people really believe this deeply, that they just don't. No, they just don't trust you.
I'm sorry, Cooper. Yes, it is fair to call it a conspiracy. What are you saying? Are you suggesting that the notion that we are creating a plot to take everybody's guns away so that we can impose martial law
but there's certainly
is
a lot of
conspiracy? Yes, that is a conspiracy. And we can do better than we're doing right now if we come together. So,
do you hear all the SEALs clapping for Bathhouse Barry?
Yeah, that's a conspiracy. That's a much different phrasing than that's a conspiracy theory. Because conspiracy theory means that we are theorizing about conspiracies within the government, or it could be anything really, but specifically within the government. So for him to say that it is a conspiracy is to say, yes, that is what we are conspiring to do. It sounds like an admission of guilt couched in very vague terms that a lot of people probably wouldn't even pick up on.
Well, some people did, people that are paying attention, and it's no secret that a lot of people are, sweating it a little bit as his last year kicks in, because people want him out of the White House on January 20th, 2017, and there's an element of fear, even if people aren't conspiracy theorists. There is just an element of fear that he's going to pull something, because there's several things he could do to have the election not go on.
Yeah, I mean, we're already in a kind of a suspended state of martial law, and in order to really drop the hammer, all he has to do is, phone and a pen, that whole thing that he's so good at. And I think a lot of folks are very concerned about that with good reason. I personally feel that if it doesn't look good for Hillary, for him to hand the reins over to her, and the communists and the globalists can't continue their reign of terror, if it looks like Trump's doing too well, I can't imagine that they would allow their grip on the nation to go, to slip away so easily. I think that it's, very, very possible that they'll stage an event or just outright declare some sort of national emergency or possibly a global emergency. All you got to do is, fire one rocket into the wrong country, and he can not only put the world at war, but he can also lock down the nation. So I think that's very fair for us to be concerned about. And it's also funny, there's another moment in that town hall right around that same time they're talking about the conspiracy. And Obama, in his most arrogant of voices, he just says, well, I'm only going to be here one more year. What are they worried about? And he just seems like he's enjoying rubbing it in because he can, even though he's a weak, frail little man.
He's a petulant child.
Sure is.
Stompy foot.
I'm sure he was fun to raise. by Frank Marshall Davis.
Yeah, that's his papa.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of evidence for that. And then, so that kind of brings us to this next across the political spectrum. We have here, his name is Stephen Pidgeon. He works at the North American Law Center, and he's drafted 48 articles of impeachment. And his case is very strong. He really knows his stuff. I've had the opportunity to hear a couple different interviews with him. And he has broken it down into 3 different sections, basically, and then subsections that total 48 of all the ways that we could impeach Obama or the reasons that we could. And so Article 1 is usurpation of the Oval Office via criminal identity fraud. He's used a multitude of different names. Barry Soetoro, we have Barack Hussein Obama, Barack Hussein Obama II. There's a couple other names listed here. This guy's clearly done his homework. We have some evidence that he uses a Social Security of someone who is deceased from Connecticut. I've seen some evidence for that. And then, so anyways, we get into Article 2 of the resolution, and it's about Obama's malfeasance, misconduct, and abuse of the Oval Office, including IRS targeting of conservative organizations and bypassing Congress with the use of executive action on key issues. And Article 3 of the resolution states that Obama has been aiding and abetting known enemies of the United States, citing Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, and Taliban, amongst others. So there's a strong case. We have his name is, what is his name? David Ajima is the Michigan RNC National Committeeman who is bringing forward these resolutions and really hoping that we all contact our RNC members and ask them to support this and try to get some steam behind it. So we can really hope that something like that goes down, because Obama needs to be exposed to the world for who he is, because there's so many people, like you said, 50% of the country that voted for him. A lot of them have buyer's remorse, but a bigger majority of them have no idea what this guy's been up to.
And they don't care.
Exactly. They're fine with it. They're okay to let him keep going, because a lot of them probably feel the same way about the United States. They'd like to see it destroyed and rebuilt in a different image straight out of Cloward and Piven. So yeah,
or they're in a hedonistic bubble with they're content with their Obama phone and their Obamacare and their Obama food stamps, and all is good. They don't realize everything's crumbling around them. It's funny, on December 31st, the UN Secretary General ends his term. Right now it's a South Korean, Ban Ki-moon is his name. So he's going out, and the rift between Netanyahu and Obama. Netanyahu wants payback. A newspaper in Kuwait, and I checked on the sources, and everything's linked up. It looks legit. Netanyahu wants to sabotage Obama's plan to be the next UN Secretary General. Now, he hasn't said that, Obama, but that's the... Some folks know about it. Obviously there's been talk about it. And while we're talking about that, there's a story going around, and I can't find anything that can prove that it's true. I can't verify this, but it says that Obama, through first of all, this Rear Admiral Rick Williams did he resign, Dan?
Well, according to this article I have up on the EU Times, it says he was fired for questioning Obama's purchase of a mansion in Dubai. I guess he sent around an email or communication of some sort questioning why Obama was on, quote, on a house hunting mission. And it looks like it's about a $5 million mansion in Dubai that Obama has purchased through the Podesta Group. And it says it's Tony Podesta runs the Podesta Group. I would imagine that he's related to one of Obama's favorite people, John Podesta. So the whole thing stinks to high heaven. People are wondering out loud if this is where he's planning to run off to after things get bad here in the United States, or if he is for any reason threatened with arrest or, charges of treason or anything like that. He'll have this place to run off to. I'd imagine they'd give him some sort of diplomatic immunity, or they'll protect him. It's a very fishy situation.
Yeah, and the house is unbelievable looking. It's probably worth every penny of $5 million.
Well, an imperial president that has spent $75 million on vacations, he's got to have only the best for his little brood and his wife's mother-in-law, who also lives in the White House on the taxpayer dime and travels with them all over the place. That's kind of, they have to have only the best.
Only the best, and plenty of armed guards around him.
Lots of guns.
Yeah, lots, and for his daughters too. And, he's not going to get impeached. He's not going to leave office before his term's up, and the Senate's probably not going to follow through. But it's a symbolic measure, and it would go down in history. No matter how far they get with it, it needs to be documented that that word impeach needs to go along with his name, because he is a criminal.
Exactly, and we can't allow him to set a precedent that he's really lowered the bar for the presidency, and if things continue along that path, even if we get another president along the way or Hillary Clinton, that allows them to operate even lower than that. We have to say, put our foot down. It's been 7 years too much of this already, but we still have a year to go. Let's put our foot down and say this man is a criminal and prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law for treason and these other 48 articles of impeachment. And this kind of ties in with Greg Abbott in Texas really putting his own foot down against the federal government, and he's calling for the Convention of the States. And I find this very interesting because in the last episode that we cut, we talked about how if there's going to be a local state rebuttal rejection of the federal government, it's going to start in Texas, because this governor there has really proven himself to be a strong moral personality. He's taken a stand against Obama on sanctuary cities, on Planned Parenthood, on the open border, and also on the gun situation, tweeting out Molan Labe. So this is a tough character. And so he's proposed some amendments to the Constitution if they were to convene convene the states to discuss this. And I do realize that this does open the door to a scary scenario if things were to get out of control. But the bottom line is, and the reality is, that the Constitution is already being decimated. So if it was to continue down the pathway that Obama and his group want to take the Constitution, it will soon no longer exist. I would much prefer to see a bunch of well-intentioned, smart, constitutional patriots get together and try to do something good to stem the flow. And so a couple of these amendments are great. We have here, one of them requires Congress to balance its budget. I can't imagine how anyone would have a problem with that. It would prohibit administrative agencies from creating federal law. That's something that has really gone haywire under Obama with the EPA, the DHS, you name it. Any of the alphabet agencies, they're basically writing their own laws and enforcing them and arming up to do so. It would also allow a 2/3 majority of the states to override a U.S. Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court has also taken to melding itself in with the legislative branch into this triad now that seems like they all feel like they can do whatever they want. And they are going against the wishes of many of the states, and that's something that needs to also be stopped. I know that Ted Cruz is called for term limits for Supreme Court justices. I think that's a great decision. Why would we want someone getting on there that we can't remove? It's an unelected position. If the people say, hey, we want these people out of here, they're making bad decisions for the United States, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Elena Kagan, then we should have the option to do that.
Absolutely, and that's a lot of common sense things that can be done, because we're at the point where the people are supposed to be in charge of the government, and obviously it's flipped since the Constitution was signed into law, and it's the opposite now, where the servants and the government is the master. So basically there's two choices. The founders built Article 5 into the Constitution for a situation like this. The other option is a revolution, and I don't think that's going to happen. So we have to do. I wasn't always on board, but the last couple of years have been just, it's out of control, completely out of control. And what you were saying about a precedent for the president, I was thinking back, and it seems in my lifetime every administration pushed the parameters and expanded the scope of power of the executive branch, and it's gotten worse just every term. And like you said, if Hillary was the next one, what would she do? I mean, there's so many problems. Presidents can appoint anyone they want out of the private sector into positions that greatly affect the country. Some of these advisors and some of these stooges that are on the White House, they should, administrative people should not have so much influence on the country. And I agree with the term limits on the Supreme Court. I've heard Ruth Bader Ginsburg likes to drink and gets hammered and falls asleep. I mean, what if they have dementia when they're 90 years old, and are they still going to be on the bench, in diapers?
Seriously, I mean, who knows what's going on behind the scenes with those people? I mean, you have John Roberts was brought in as supposedly some sort of conservative-minded constitutional, respect for the Constitution when he was brought into the Supreme Court, and it's clear that either that was, a smokescreen, or there is behind-the-scenes blackmailing going on to some degree. But these people are, a lot of them are a mess. Elena Kagan, I did a little research on that whole situation and found out that a few years back, before she was appointed to the Supreme Court, there were different entities, there was people or organizations that were filing basically lawsuits against the federal government to uncover Obama's true identity. They were seeking to find out what his identity was. They wanted to see his papers and birth certificate and all that. And Elena Kagan was responsible for blocking many of these lawsuits, and this was before she was appointed to the Supreme Court. So it can be easily surmised or assumed that she was rewarded for protecting Obama from discovery, and then rewarded for that by being appointed to the Supreme Court. There's a lot of stinky stuff going on behind the scenes that we have no idea about.
Yeah, and we probably never will. All House of Cards stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and paying back favors.
Exactly. There's an element of crony corporatism in the federal government and even at the international level that is pretty scary, because it's creating these monster monopolies, and you have companies like Google and Facebook that are affecting policy. That you have Facebook, Zuckerberg colluding with Angela Merkel to ramp up the police state in Germany, and she's activated, somebody that used to be head of the Stasi. She has them and their minions trolling Facebook now, looking for people that are speaking poorly about the refugees or the open border situation, and they're actually going to prison for it. So it's a crony, corporatist, fascist police state that is emerging that is very concerning.
Yeah, and Obama is pretty tight with the Google founders. I don't know if they're still running it, but Eric Schmidt, they go to the White House, and having him in tight with the Google, those who hold the strings and the control of Google is pretty scary. And Twitter has sold out to Islam. I read that Saudis have the second most stock in Twitter now. They bought it. Did you see?
There's definitely an element of there's money coming from Saudi Arabia that is going straight into Twitter. I saw, it looks like in October of last year, Saudi billionaire Prince Al Walid doubles his stake in Twitter. That's just one example. He now owns over 5% of the company, but there are others involved in the holdings. And when Islam starts sinking its claws into any sort of situation that involves free speech, you know that it's going to get trampled on, and that's pretty apparent already with the backlash against Milo Yiannopoulos, who his star has been rising very rapidly in the media and also just as a cultural icon at this point. And it looks like he is the first and definitely the most high-profile official figure to have his verification on Twitter unverified and penalized, because he's quite outspoken. He's very anti-PC, he's anti-feminist, he's also anti-Islam, because as a gay man himself, he's quite concerned with what would happen to him if there was to be a bigger push towards, Sharia principles and throwing gays off roofs or stoning them to death. So I think he has a valid concern, but clearly there's been a backlash from Twitter, and you have to wonder what the roots of that are.
Well, several of my friends on Twitter got put in Twitmo. They were banned. Their accounts were disabled. A few of them have been restored, and these are people that will retweet or compose original tweets exposing things about Islam, facts, news stories, whatever it may be. And the hypocrisy of it all that just stinks to the high heavens is that ISIS will operate on Twitter, and after they have a firefight, they'll tweet that they killed whoever they killed. These ISIS accounts are operating for a long time before they get banned, and they're communicating and they're bragging. And we have, we're in America, we have the First Amendment, and we're not making any threats. We're just putting out information about the truth about Islam and getting squashed and banned. And it's not just individual people. Twitchy, several websites, The Blaze, where they were talking about it. It's unprecedented in the time that I've used Twitter. I've never seen such a crackdown and such a violation of First Amendment and such collusion with Twitter with government organizations or perhaps other countries, foreign countries. Facebook is a given. That's what Twitter has become now. If they're going to keep this up, it's basically like Facebook.
Yeah, this does not bode well for the future of the First Amendment and, let's say, the new media, talk radio. Drudge went on interview with Alex Jones at the end of last year, and he had basically came out of hibernation. He's not known to be in the public arena too often beyond his site, but he chose to come out and warn us that 2016 is going to be the year when they start going after free speech very aggressively. And he was told this face-to-face by a Supreme Court justice who is, as of yet, unrevealed. But it's clear that that's happening, that's starting. And what's going to be important is that the anti-globalist, anti-mainstream, anti-government media complex people that are speaking out, it's going to be important that all of us from the little guys like us all the way through the top dogs like Michael Savage and Alex Jones and even Mark Levin, that we have a way to keep getting our voice out, because there is a tipping point on the horizon. It really feels like that. And it doesn't need to be 50% of the populace. It just needs to be a very active, a minority of people that are fighting back against the the PC culture and the trampling of free speech and the changing of language and the disinformation that's out there. I think I saw you were talking about the other day that something like in 2012, the, let's say, liberal versus conservative paradigm on the interactions on Twitter was like 20-1 liberal to conservative, and now it's closing in on even. Could you clarify that?
Well, it's closing in. I actually made a prediction that it would be 10-1 in this election, and the problem is when this is what I've seen the last 6 months. When conservatives say there's a new hashtag and the Democrats are on it, then the conservatives get on it, and then the conservatives flip the hashtag and totally take it over. Once that happens and it trends, Twitter, it just disappears and everyone sees it. It's at the top and it's trending like Democrat songs last week or someone better than Hillary for president, and people were posting pictures of pigs and I don't know, flying monkeys or whatever, and then it started trending like crazy. It was just madness, and then it just disappeared. So it's a control. It's a suppression of what people are saying. So my prediction is, even though they're doing that, the conservative voice on Twitter and the conservative influence will be twice what it was in 2012. That's a prediction.
And that's a great sign. And obviously that's, if it's trending in that direction, which these social media sites are fully aware of, that's when they see the tipping point is coming and they're losing ground, and that's probably when, why they're starting to crack down really aggressively. And that's why I think it's so important. I say this to people a lot now, is flex your First Amendment muscle, because there are a lot of people who, let's say they use social media and they see this 20-1, 15-1 ratio coming across their news feed from coworkers, from friends, from family, and they get intimidated into not saying anything or not posting what they want to post. And I realize that social media is kind of like a petty outlet, but at the same time, it is a chance for everyone to have a voice. And I've seen, this is a great meme that goes around. It says, I don't post what I post because I'm hoping you'll agree to try to change your mind, or hoping you'll agree with me. I post it to signal to people who do agree with me that they're not alone. And that's really an important thing in the conservative realm, because often the militant left will work so hard to shut people up or slander them, or, in some cases get them fired, get them excommunicated from society. I mean, they work double time, they work hard, and they are vicious. Whereas, your average libertarian / conservative would rather just not even deal with the outrage crew coming after you. So they just keep their mouth shut. But that time is over. I think that everybody needs to step up to the plate. Whether it's, if you have social media and you're active on it, Facebook, Twitter, share some stuff, share some information. Don't be afraid of the outrage committee. Use your voice. This is a time to flex the First Amendment and fight back against censorship.
Right. Yeah, 2016, I hear it in the media. People are there's so much buzz about, they just think something's up besides the election that's coming up.
There's something in the water, there's something in the air. This is the year. Everyone knows this is where the country hangs in the balance. Even if they don't necessarily know why, or if they're not really up with the news, you can feel it. You can feel something happening. You can feel it in what's going on around the world, the way the world is crumbling. There are so many important people or military guys say the world is on fire, and it really is, and it's getting worse every single day. The economies are getting worse. There's conflict arising in so many different regions of the world that is escalating all at the same time. And then the let's say the upheaval in the United States, the cultural upheaval, is hitting a fever pitch. So there's going to be, the bubble's going to burst, and people can feel that, whether they understand why or not.
Yeah. We got to go to break for a few minutes. We don't have to pay any bills, but we are going to take a 2-minute break. And I'm going to play this. It's good timing because this is a woman that grew up in Soviet Russia, and she watched all that happen, and her country was upended and destroyed. Then she is observing our country doing the same thing. So this is a caller on Michael Savage, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes. See you on the other side.
Yeah. About China. So I assume that you are I'm not trying to be invasive. Are you from Russia?
Yes, I am.
And the reason I ask is because most Russian people I know are super literate when it comes to politics, having studied their own system for so long. And you are obviously probably, I would say, obsessed with politics, given the background of where you came from, right?
That's why I bought your book recently, and I'm reading.
No, I'm saying, so people who are as obsessed with politics, if not more than I am, have opinions that are very valuable. Well, I don't have to ask you a leading question, as I will. You do agree that this country is going in the wrong direction, don't you?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm devastated, and if Trump will win, I will sleep better than ever.
See, we all fear that Obama is doing the exact opposite of what the American people know to be the right thing to do. In fact, we all know it. We don't just think it, we know it. And he's experimenting with systems of governance that were tried and failed in the ex-Soviet Union. Isn't that also correct?
Absolutely. I heard everything he was saying back in Soviet Union in Russian, and I couldn't understand how American people could buy the nonsense he was saying, like we'll build a beautiful future communism. This is all agenda-less. Yeah,
it's frightening. It really is frightening to see how dumb the American electorate is. But, you know, Santayana, the Spanish philosopher, wrote a long time ago, those who do not know history are condemned to repeat it. And in this country, that is oh so true, especially when you see the insanity of the media, how they continuously narcotize the people with pornography and violence on a daily basis. And eventually the mind becomes numb, where they don't even care about politics. And then they start to say stupid things such as, oh, they're all the same. Oh, it won't make any difference whether Trump wins or anyone else wins. It's all corrupt. That's utter rubbish. It's not true. And the proof is, look what one man can do in the negative. Look what Obama has done in the negative. This is what one man can do in the negative. Can you imagine what one man can do in the positive?
I hope they will have lots of positivity coming after Trump.
And we're back in Agents of Information on the Rebooting Liberty Radio Network. That lady seems to think Trump is the answer.
Yeah, you know what's funny is also about 20% of Democrats seem to think that Trump is the answer as well, which is it portends to an excellent election if we can keep that number rising, or if they really come through. It sounds like very Reagan-esque in how the outlook is. If Democrats are willing to cross the aisle and vote for Trump, which totally flies in the face of what the mainstream machine is trying to tell us, even from the conservative media like Fox News, supposedly conservative, let's say. Mm-hmm. But the support for Trump is reflected in the polls to such a massive degree, but I believe that it is even bigger than what they're letting on.
Yeah, because they don't want nobody in the media, nobody in the elite consultant class, our oligarchy that we have in D.C., K Street. They don't want him. That he's going to shake things up, and So we were going to talk about the refugee. It's a crisis, really, in the migration into Europe, and really it's going to pick up here too more than it already is. And we had the massive. The sexual assaults and some of the rapes, and we have killing in Calgary, and then there was a bombing, and it's just everywhere. The past few days, even.
Yeah, all the things that the voices of reason that have been tagged as Islamophobes or whatever over the last 5 to 10 years. People like Pamela Geller, Walid Shubat, Geert Wilders, they've been warning for a long time, saying, if you keep letting these people in, we're going to start seeing crime and unrest like we've never seen in the modern Western world, and it's happening now. So Europe is obviously on the front lines. Things are just ratcheting up there. That whole situation that came out of Cologne a couple days after New Year's Eve that has begun to blossom into quite a story. It's been totally covered up by the mainstream media and even by officials there. It's turning into just such a huge thing. Europe is imploding, and the unfortunate thing is that a lot of the folks there don't have weaponry to defend themselves. However, video that came out of the Cologne situation shows that many of these young Muslim thugs actually do have weapons, showing them firing off guns. People are wondering where they got those. But so it started off that there was this mass attack in Cologne, Germany, which we spoke about in the last episode. And there's some pretty harrowing footage that has come out of there. There's one that has been making the rounds on social media. It's a woman, just like a Western-looking woman, just getting dragged through a huge crowd, and they just pull her down into the subway, and she's screaming, and no one's helping her. And there's all these men that just take her down in the subway, and they just gang raped her. And that's happening all over the place. These animals, they rape in quantity. There'll be 5, 10, 20 of them. There was a woman, a reporter in Egypt, I remember a couple years ago, she was raped by like 200 different men. I don't know to what degree, but when there's a gang of like that around you, these people are satanic. So some more countries have been reporting that there were sexual assaults on that same evening, coming out of Austria, Finland,
Sweden.
France,
Sweden.
Yep, even Switzerland, who is not part of the EU. They're not really in with this whole refugee situation, but they're starting to see the effects of these people trickling into their country. I spent quite a bit of time in Switzerland last year traveling around the country, and for the most part it felt very safe, definitely compared to other parts of Europe. But as we got closer to the French border in cities like Montreux, and then we went into Lausanne, you could see that the Muslim culture and the ghettoization was starting to spread there. And as soon as you enter into these neighborhoods, you start feeling uncomfortable because of just the aura there, and just the young men that are standing around looking at you like they want to take you on. So it's spreading all across Europe. And the scary part of the news today is that a German minister has announced that Europe has barely even seen the start of the migrant influx. And he said, his name is Gerd Müller, and he said that only 10% of Syrian and Iraqi migrants have reached Europe so far, and 8 to 10 million are still on the way, with even more to come from Africa. This is just terrifying. This is the equivalent of just a tidal wave.
Yeah, they said it's irreversible.
And it is. And Germany has already identified, even back in November, the government was fully aware of 8,000 Islamic radicals inside Germany at that very moment. So you can imagine how many were that they didn't know about, or how many more prospective radicals that could convert any day. And then on top of that, they've had who knows how many more in the last 2 months. So they're fully aware of what they're doing to their country. Angela Merkel is a demon.
Yeah. Oh, potato face.
Oh yeah, she's about as foul as they come, and a lot of folks are concerned that Hillary Clinton would be a kind of the United States mirror image of Merkel. I believe she probably would be even worse.
Worse, yep, and that's saying something.
Definitely, and Trump has come under fire for calling for a temporary halt to Muslim immigration. Any of us with some common sense know that this absolutely has to happen in addition to a full halt on all immigration until we can figure out what's going on here. But interestingly, Louis Farrakhan actually just recently came out in an interview saying that he also believes that there needs to be a halt to Muslim immigration. He called Islam a failed religion. He thinks it needs a reformation. And in his own words, he said, in this way, I think Mr. Trump is wise to vet anyone coming from that area into America, because the hatred for America is in the streets now, adding that if the U.S. wasn't careful about the vetting process, it might be inviting its own destruction. And that's so true. All we have to do is look to Europe to understand that statement.
Yeah. Did you ever think that you would be quoting Farrakhan in that manner? He's down off the mothership now, I guess.
Yeah, I think from what I understand, he's gone from the respected leader of the Nation of Islam and much of the black community, but now he's really figured out what's going on. The globalists that are literally trying to implode the entire West via all their different sticky fingers and rising up of cultural Marxism in this country. They're using that as a weapon in all sorts of different factions of the minority groups in this country, and I think he's really come to terms with that. And now my understanding is that he is now a target of the federal government and the globalists in general, who think that he's becoming dangerous by trying to unite everyone against the globalists rather than trying to rile up a particular minority group.
Yeah, God forbid somebody tries to unite the country that in the spotlight, in the national spotlight.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's why the entire establishment is going after Trump, because he is uniting people, which is clear with all the different folks that are supporting him and prepared to vote for him all the way across the spectrum. He holds a commanding lead over Hillary Clinton in the working class America. It's like 46% to 26%. That's huge, and that's the heartbeat of America. And also, in some polls he's showing 25% in the African American community, where normally the maximum is 7%. He's blowing that away. In the Hispanic community, he's quite popular, despite what they try to tell you in the mainstream media. So he seems to be the great uniter in a way that people hoped Obama would be, ignorantly, unfortunately, but he really seems to be doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so another interesting development in I'm going to start over, okay?
Yeah, I can cut this out.
Okay, we'll go back to this. Okay. So we had two more incidents over the weekend on North American soil of attacks by Islamic radicals. One of them got a pretty good amount of press because it was in Philadelphia and it was a police officer involved. Another one got almost no press at all except through the new media. And that would have been that two Islamic radicals named Mohammed, not surprisingly, both of them, walked into a very busy nightclub in Calgary, Canada, which is just a few hours north of me, and opened fire. And they were attempting to recreate a Paris-type situation. Fortunately, you had a couple bouncers that were very quick to act. I think only one person was shot, and these guys were taken down. But that has gotten almost no coverage whatsoever. You have Justin Trudeau, the new Prime Minister of Canada, is a total joke. He's so excited about importing thousands, tens of thousands of refugees, so that would totally destroy his narrative if that was to get more coverage. And then also you had the shooting in Philadelphia where a recent convert to support of ISIS, who's a devout Muslim, he ambushed a Philadelphia police officer who was sitting in his car at an intersection, shot him 11 times, and managed to get away. And then when they finally captured him, he declared that he had done it for Allah and that he was a supporter of ISIS. And this new mayor of Philadelphia, who looks like a total muppet, I mean, I don't even know, this guy looks so dumb. He looks like he's missing some brain cells. And it's clear that he is, because he came out in a press conference, the Mr. Know-It-All dhimmi that he is, protecting Islam at all costs, just like so many others in the federal government, and said that the attack had nothing to do with Islam whatsoever. He said, in no way, shape, or form does anyone in this room believe that Islam or the teaching of Islam has anything to do with what you've seen on the screen. That totally contradicts what the police chief statement had made a couple minutes before that. And you can see the police chief standing right behind him in disbelief and disgust, because he had just stated that the attacker was doing it in the name of Allah.
Yeah. Then no crime like this, no assault like this could be done by someone in the name of the religion of peace. This guy must have a constant Kool-Aid connection going on. He has a pledge to combat bigotry. He's in signing the pledge, he agreed to combat criticism of Islam and to speak out against Islamophobia. How about speaking out against Christophobia?
Sure, or how about that Islamophobia is a word that was created in an Islamic think tank. It's not even real, because the fear of jihad is not an irrational fear. It is quite rational. There have been over 27,000 deadly jihadist attacks just since 9/11 across the globe. So a phobia is an irrational fear, and fear of jihad is quite rational. And the way that they throw shade for these people is just incredible to me. You have Rachel Maddow saying that the motive of the Philly cop shooter is murky and unclear. They have the media calling the Calgary attack a random act of violence. It's not, and they're doing such a disservice to their fellow countrymen by pretending that they don't understand the cause or the motives of these attacks. It's quite clear. It's stated in the Quran exactly what they're supposed to do.
They will defend Islam until they're on their knees waiting to be beheaded. They'll right to the last moment, and they'll say, but I defended you, and thinking they'll get mercy. And usually the Democrats and liberals are very protective of LGBT rights, typically more than Republicans, and it's a real contradiction that they are so supportive of people that throw homosexuals off of roofs and kill them, hang them from cranes, and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, you have these feminists that are totally consumed with the idea of a Western rape culture or rape culture on campus. There is an actual rape system in Islam, and they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the abuse of women. So they're just off in la la land, in a fantasy land. There are so many Americans, so many Westerners who do not understand the objectives of Islam, and we would all do well to learn a little bit more about it. And one of the people that's doing a great job educating folks about that, he's done a lot of research, he's a historian. His name is Stefan Molyneux. He's the founder and host of Free Domain Radio, which is the largest and most popular philosophical show in the world. He has over 75 million downloads, so he's really getting a profile in the alternative media now because he's speaking truth. He's speaking it with supporting evidence, supporting facts, and he's really tied it all together nicely. And he's done a couple of great interviews lately that I've heard. I think you have a clip from one of them.
So that's really, really important to understand. And we don't have the historical view of Islam that is characterized by the history of the Crusades. Look, Christianity was a Middle Eastern religion. The European religions were like the old Norse religions with Ragnarok and so on. Christianity is a Middle Eastern religion. And how many Christian countries are there left in the Middle East? Counting, like, if you accept a little bit in Lebanon, none. Because Islam is a radical expansionist ideology. To say that Islam is a religion is like saying communism is an economic system. It is not true. Islam is a combination of religion and a highly expansionist political ideology. And highly expansionist is putting it mildly. Saying that Islam is somewhat expansionist is saying like a supernova is somewhat expansionist. Islam, of course, in the 7th century was founded. By the end of the 7th century, it had taken over most of North Africa and all of the Middle East. It is an incredibly expansionist ideology. It seeks one world domination, just as communism did. And the fact is that, of course, the first couple of Muslims are going to be nice because they have to wait to get the numbers up in order to begin to affect the kind of social change. When the Islamists first got their toeholds and then entire countries taken over in Europe, it took over 700 years of brutal medieval battle to drive the Islamic population out of Europe. And the Islamics, of course, were taking millions of Europeans, mostly through piracy, into the slave trade. The Islamists, 14 centuries of the slave trade, with a death count that has been estimated at over 110 million.
Yep, and that's he has really laid out what's going on with the refugee situation in Europe, and what a farce it is, and how they're avoiding certain countries and traveling on to others due to capitalize on much more generous welfare states and the ability to bring their families in with them. And then also he I think the next bit he really gives a good explanation about the expansionist nature of Islam.
Say that it sort of feels like, for me, 3 decades of preparation is coming down to one and only 1 year, and that is this year, where the maximum effort must be put out to reach people with ideas of liberty and voluntarism and freedom and so on, because it seems like events are accelerating at a crazy snowball fashion, and now is the time where we really need to stand tall and push back. It feels to me like it's all coming down to this year, and the migrant crisis in Europe is one of the great aspects of that. It is not a bunch of migrants fleeing war. Look, the closest European country to Syria is Cyprus, just a couple of dozen miles off the coast. And the refugees are not going to Cyprus. Why? Because Cyprus will not allow the refugees to bring in family members. The 1 million that Angela Merkel has invited into Germany are merely the tip of the spear, because they're going to be family reunification policies that allow them to bring in millions and millions of more. Lithuania has a small welfare state, and Lithuania has thrown its gates wide to invite these migrants in, and they're not going to Lithuania. They're hip-hopping over many countries where they're not under threat.
Yeah, so couple that with what the German minister is saying, that only maybe 10% of these migrants have reached Europe so far, that they can expect another 8 to 10 million in Germany alone, and that they can also expect another huge wave from North Africa once they make their way over there. That really indicates that the next few years are going to be super interesting, probably devastating for Europe. And if we keep following down that same path, the same will be for us, and we have a lot of darkness to look forward to if this continues. And also, you have a great thinker right there talking about how decades of learning for him and educating himself and building up his repertoire of info weapons has prepared him for 2016. And he knows that this is the pivotal year. I think, like we said earlier in the broadcast, a lot of us feel that way, especially those of us that are paying attention to what's going on around the world. In the Koreas right now, you have a situation developing with Saudi Arabia and Iran. You have the economies just in meltdown, the markets. There are so many cracks starting to split wide open, and the epicenter really is going to be the United States in many ways, and Europe. So Europe is going to start heading down the tubes if they don't put a stem on this immigration situation. But I do believe that it's probably too late for them at this point. They've been populated with an unsavory crowd who does seek to overturn their entire way of life. And that's also happening here in the United States, and we're going to have to keep fighting that. This entire year is just going to be a battle, and it's going to continue on from there, and we'll see what happens with the coming elections and our local elections, and what's developing with the rebel attitude in some of these states that are taking a stand against the federal government. So we need to be vigilant this year. We need to flex our First Amendment muscle. We need to flex our Second Amendment muscle by supporting it to the maximum. Go buy a gun if you haven't yet. Support the companies out there that are making them. Join the NRA or some other gun-supporting group if you can. Just throw your weight behind every cause that you can, and if we all chip in together, we can take a stand against what could eventually turn into the collapse of the United States if we're not really vigilant about it. So it's a big year. 2016 is the year it will define us all.
Yeah, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a wild ride. Well, unfortunately, we're to the end of the broadcast. Dan, where can people find you at?
Yep, you can find me on Facebook at Citizen Analyst, on Twitter at Citizen Analyst. I also write for the Western Free Press and the Readout News. Have a great couple of days until our next broadcast.
You can find me at rebootingliberty.com. The Rebooting Liberty Radio Network just became an affiliate for 4 great talk shows this week. We'll welcome the Gavin Mitchell Show, the Matt Locke Show, the Andrea Kay Show, and New Media Patriot Radio. They are top-notch hosts, and the shows are very well put together, very informative and entertaining. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you'll join us next time. Remember, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Stay vigilant, seek the truth, and never be silent. God bless America.